Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands as he closed the auto repair shop for another long day. The small garage barely kept him afloat, but it was honest work in a neighborhood that had seen better times. As he pulled down the metal shutter, a soft mewing caught his attention from the alley beside his shop. 3 cats huddled near the dumpster, their fur matted and eyes reflecting the dim streetlight. The largest was a sleek black female with unusual golden markings around her eyes, while 2 smaller tabby cats pressed close to her sides. Marcus had always been a sucker for strays. "Hey there, little ones," he said softly, crouching down. The black cat regarded him with intelligence that seemed almost human. Her companions hissed softly, but she remained calm, studying him with those strange amber eyes. Marcus reached into his lunch bag and pulled out half a sandwich. He tore it into pieces and scattered them on the ground. The smaller cats pounced on the food immediately, but the black cat waited, watching him carefully before approaching. "You're the smart one, aren't you?" Marcus murmured. Something about her demeanor reminded him of his grandmother's old stories about dragons in human form. He shook his head at the silly thought. Over the next few weeks, the cats became regular visitors. Marcus started buying proper cat food, setting up a small shelter behind his shop with old blankets and a makeshift roof. The black cat, whom he'd started calling Nix, seemed to understand his schedule perfectly. She would appear exactly when he closed shop, leading her 2 companions to their feeding spot. What puzzled Marcus was how clean they always looked despite living rough. Their fur had a lustrous quality that seemed impossible for street cats, and Nix's golden markings appeared to shimmer in certain light. The vet he consulted was baffled by their perfect health and unusual vitality. One evening, as autumn rain drummed against the shop windows, Marcus heard frantic scratching at his door. He opened it to find all 3 cats soaked and agitated. Nix looked up at him with what could only be described as urgency. "What's wrong, girl?" Marcus asked, stepping aside to let them in. They rushed past him, Nix heading straight for the radio on his workbench. She stood on her hind legs, pawing at the tuning dial until static cleared into a news broadcast. Reports continued to flood in about strange lights in the sky across major cities worldwide. Military officials maintain these are weather phenomena, but eyewitness accounts describe structured objects moving in formation. Marcus stared at the cat in disbelief. There was no way she could have known to tune to that frequency. Yet Nix sat perfectly still, her golden eyes fixed on the radio as if absorbing every word. The broadcast continued with increasing urgency. Governments worldwide were going dark. Communication satellites were being systematically disabled. What started as mysterious lights had evolved into something far more sinister. Multiple unconfirmed reports of ground forces in major metropolitan areas. Citizens are advised to remain indoors and avoid contact with unknown entities. The radio crackled and went silent. Power flickered throughout the building before dying completely. In the darkness, Marcus could swear he saw Nix's markings glowing with a soft golden light. Emergency sirens began wailing across the city. Through his windows, Marcus watched strange triangular craft descending from the clouds, their hulls gleaming with alien symbols. Beams of harsh blue light swept the streets below, and wherever they touched, people simply vanished. "This can't be happening," Marcus whispered, backing away from the window. A tremendous crash shook the building as something massive landed on the street outside. Through the gaps in his metal shutter, Marcus glimpsed towering figures in dark armor moving with mechanical precision. Their movements were too fluid to be entirely robotic, yet too coordinated to be fully organic. One of the smaller cats, Whiskers, began to whimper. The other Patches pressed close to Marcus's leg, trembling, but Nix remained calm, her golden eyes now definitely glowing in the darkness. She approached Marcus and did something that made his blood run cold. She spoke. Not the rough approximation of human speech some parrots managed, but clear, perfectly articulated words in a voice like silk over steel. "Marcus Chen, mechanic of Earth, you have shown kindness to those you believed helpless. This debt will not be forgotten." Marcus stumbled backward, his mind reeling. "You can talk? What are you?" The black cat's form began to shimmer and expand. The golden markings spread across her fur like liquid fire, and her eyes blazed with ancient power. The air around her crackled with energy that made Marcus's hair stand on end. "I am Zarathax, daughter of the Void Queen, heir to the draconic imperium of the Outer Rim. These are my companions and protectors." currently maintaining forms your people would find non-threatening. The two smaller cats also began to transform, their tabby fur giving way to scales that gleamed like polished metal. Within moments, three beings stood before Marcus in forms that were unmistakably reptilian, yet graceful beyond anything earthly. Nyx, now revealed as Zarathax, stood nearly 7 feet tall. Her skin held the same black coloration with golden traceries, but now Marcus could see they were intricate patterns that seemed to move and shift on their own. Her eyes retained their amber color, but now held depths that spoke of ages and wisdom beyond human comprehension. "The hegemony has found Earth," she continued, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in Marcus's bones. "They have been systematically conquering star systems throughout this sector, harvesting resources and enslaving populations. We were investigating their advanced forces when our ship was damaged in orbit. Through the windows, the sounds of invasion intensified. More crashes, more sirens, and underneath it all, a low humming that seemed to vibrate through the very foundation of the building. We sought refuge in forms that would allow us to observe without detection, while our ship's systems regenerated. Your kindness provided us with both shelter and valuable intelligence about human nature." Marcus's legs gave out and he slumped against his workbench. "This is insane. Yesterday my biggest problem was a transmission rebuild. And now you're telling me your alien royalty and Earth is being invaded?" Zarathax moved with liquid grace to the window, her scaled fingers touching the metal shutter. Where she touched, the metal became transparent, allowing them to see the horror unfolding outside. Massive harvesting machines rolled down the street, their mechanical arms scooping up vehicles, debris, and anything else of value. The blue beams had stopped, leaving the streets eerily empty of human life. In the distance, enormous ships hung in the sky like dark moons, their holds presumably filling with Earth's stolen resources. "The hegemony operates with ruthless efficiency," Zarathax explained. "They strip worlds of everything valuable, then move on. Populations are either enslaved for labor or simply eliminated if they prove too troublesome." The building shuddered again as something heavy passed overhead. Marcus could hear the whine of energy weapons and the crash of collapsing structures. His entire world was ending, and he was trapped with 3 shape-shifting dragon aliens who had been masquerading as his pet cats. "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus asked, finding his voice despite the surreal circumstances. Zarathax turned from the window, her golden patterns pulsing with a steady rhythm. "Because, Marcus Chen, you may be humanity's only hope." Marcus stared at Zarathax in disbelief. "Me? I fix cars for a living. I can barely balance my checkbook, let alone save humanity." The dragon princess moved to his workbench, her clawed fingers tracing the tools with surprising gentleness. "The hegemony succeeds because they understand only force and subjugation. They cannot comprehend genuine compassion or selfless action. When their advanced scouts reported on human behavior, they cataloged your species as primitive and easily conquered." One of her companions, the former Whiskers, approached Marcus. In this reptilian form, the being stood about 6 feet tall with silver scales that seemed to absorb and reflect light in patterns Marcus couldn't quite follow. "I am Kethvar, tactical specialist of the Royal Guard," the being said in a voice like grinding stone. "For 3 months we observed human interactions while maintaining our disguised forms. Most humans showed the expected range of behaviors: selfishness, aggression, indifference to those weaker than themselves. Patches, now revealed as a bronze-scaled warrior named Veltara, added, "But you were different. Despite your own struggles, you consistently showed kindness to creatures that could offer you nothing in return. This behavior pattern is unknown to the hegemony." Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building behind his eyes. "So what does that mean exactly? You want me to kill aliens with the power of friendship?" Zarathax's expression shifted to what might have been amusement on a human face. "Not quite. The hegemony's greatest weakness is their inability to predict or counter acts of genuine altruism. Their entire military doctrine assumes all beings operate from self-interest. They have no protocols for dealing with truly selfless behavior." The building shook again as something massive passed overhead. Through the transparent section of wall, Marcus watched a convoy of alien vehicles moving down the street. The machines were clearly stripping everything of value, loading materials into massive transport containers. "Our ship crashed in the industrial district," Zarathax continued. "Its stealth systems are still functional, but the main engines require rare earth elements to complete repairs. The hegemony is systematically harvesting those same elements. Kethavar projected a holographic display from a device on his wrist. The image showed a sleek vessel hidden beneath what appeared to be a collapsed warehouse. The ship's AI has been monitoring hegemony communications. They plan to strip this planet completely within 72 hours, then move on to your neighboring worlds. Marcus felt sick. Mars colonies? Eventually all human settlements, Veltara confirmed grimly. The hegemony views your species as marginally useful for manual labor, but not worth preserving in large numbers. The weight of the situation crashed down on Marcus. Millions of people were going to die, and these 3 aliens were suggesting he could somehow prevent it. I still don't understand what you expect me to do. Zarathax moved to the window again, her golden patterns pulsing brighter. The hegemony fleet is controlled by a central command ship in high orbit. Their ground forces operate through synchronized neural links to that command vessel. If the command ship were destroyed, their entire operation would collapse into chaos. Okay, but how does a mechanic from Detroit help with that? The Dragon Princess turned back to him, and Marcus saw something in her amber eyes that looked almost like hope. Your actions over the past months demonstrated a behavioral pattern the hegemony cannot compute. If you were to approach their positions openly without weapons or hostile intent, their tactical computers would be unable to classify you as a threat. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Because walking up to alien invaders and saying hello has worked out so well for everyone else they've vaporized? The difference is intent, Kethavar explained. The hegemony scanners are extremely sophisticated. They can detect aggressive thoughts, fear responses, even the biochemical signatures of deception. But they have no programming to recognize pure altruistic intent. Veltara activated her own holographic display, showing a 3-dimensional map of the city. Red markers indicated hegemony positions, while blue dots showed remaining human population clusters. Their security protocols automatically engage against any approach carrying weapons, showing elevated stress hormones, or displaying hostile brain patterns. But if someone approached with genuine intent to help others, even at personal cost, the system would classify you as a non-threat. Zarathax finished. Their guards would be confused, their computers unable to process your motivations. In that confusion we could strike. Marcus studied the holographic cityscape, trying to process the insanity of what they were suggesting. You want me to walk into an alien military complex, armed with nothing but good intentions, hoping their security system has a glitch? Not a glitch, Zarathax corrected. A fundamental limitation. The hegemony has conquered 17 star systems using the same tactics. They succeed because they understand selfish motivations perfectly. Greed, fear, the desire for power or survival. These are predictable and easily countered. She moved closer to Marcus, her presence somehow both alien and strangely comforting. But genuine compassion, the willingness to sacrifice for others without expectation of reward, this is beyond their comprehension. It is also, we have learned, humanity's greatest strength. Outside, the sounds of systematic destruction continued. Marcus could hear the whine of energy weapons cutting through metal and concrete. Somewhere in the distance, a building collapsed with a thunderous crash. Even if this crazy plan worked, Marcus said slowly, how would we actually get to their command ship? It's in orbit. Kethavar smiled, revealing teeth that would have looked at home in a shark's mouth. Our vessel possesses sufficient firepower to engage a hegemony command ship, but only if we can reach it undetected. The enemy maintains a sensor grid that would identify our ship the moment it left atmosphere. Unless, Veltara added, we had someone aboard who could convince their security systems that our vessel posed no threat. Marcus felt the pieces clicking together in his mind, and he didn't like the picture they formed. You want me to somehow get onto your ship, travel into space, and then what? Shake hands with their commander while you blow up his ship? Something like that, Zarathax confirmed, though the actual plan is considerably more complex. The Dragon Princess moved to Marcus's tool cabinet and began examining his equipment with professional interest. The hegemony's command ships have a vulnerability. Their central processors require direct neural interface for maximum efficiency. The commanding officer must maintain a constant connection to the ship's systems. She picked up a wrench and tested its weight thoughtfully. If someone could get close enough to physically disrupt that connection, the entire fleet would lose coordination. Even a few minutes of chaos would be sufficient for Allied forces to exploit. Allied forces? Marcus asked. Kethvar's expression grew grim. The Draconic Imperium has been tracking the hegemony's expansion for months. A battle fleet waits just beyond your solar system's edge, but they cannot act without confirmation that humans are worth preserving. Your species has shown both remarkable potential and disturbing tendencies toward self-destruction. Our intervention here was meant to be purely observational, Velterra explained. The Imperium needed to determine whether humanity should be offered protection or simply allowed to face the consequences of their own actions. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. And your recommendation? Zarathax set down the wrench and faced him directly. That depends entirely on your choice, Marcus Chen. Will you help us save your world knowing you may not survive? Or will you choose safety and let others fight this battle? The building shuddered again, and this time Marcus heard the distinctive sound of his neighbor's auto shop being demolished. Mrs. Patterson lived above that shop with her 3 grandchildren. He thought about the kids who sometimes helped him sort bolts for pocket change, about old Rodriguez who brought him coffee every morning, about the dozens of small kindnesses that made his neighborhood feel like home. If I do this, Marcus said finally, what are the odds we actually succeed? The 3 dragons exchanged glances before Zarathax answered honestly. Unknown. This strategy has never been attempted before. Marcus picked up the wrench he had been examining, feeling its familiar weight in his hands. Well, he said with a grim smile, I've never saved the world before either. Guess we're all trying new things today. The golden patterns on Zarathax's skin pulsed brighter, and for the first time since revealing her true form, she looked genuinely hopeful. Then we begin immediately. Every moment we delay, more humans die. Marcus nodded, tucking the wrench into his tool belt out of habit. What's the first step? We get to our ship, Kethvar said, activating his holographic display again. And hope your species' capacity for compassion is as extraordinary as you've made it appear. The journey through the devastated city proved more harrowing than Marcus had imagined. Zarathax and her companions moved with fluid grace, their reptilian forms designed for stealth and speed. Marcus, meanwhile, stumbled over debris and struggled to keep pace while trying to process the destruction around him. Entire city blocks had been reduced to skeletal frameworks. The hegemony's harvesting machines worked with terrifying efficiency, stripping copper from electrical systems, steel from building supports, and rare metals from electronic devices. What had once been his neighborhood now looked like the aftermath of a tornado made of robots. Stay close, Velterra whispered, her bronze scales shifting color to match the shadows. Hegemony patrols follow predictable patterns, but their sensors are extremely sensitive. They crept through the remains of Murphy's Corner store, where Marcus had bought his morning coffee for 15 years. The place was completely gutted, but he could still see the faded outline of the Good Morning sign old Murphy had hand-painted decades ago. Kethvar raised a clawed hand, signaling them to stop. Through the shattered storefront, they watched a squad of hegemony soldiers march past. The aliens wore sleek black armor that seemed to absorb light, and their movements were synchronized with mechanical precision. Each carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Neural linking, Zarathax explained in a voice barely above a breath. They share a collective consciousness while on duty. Individual thought is suppressed in favor of tactical efficiency. Marcus studied the alien soldiers, noting how their heads turned in unison, how they walked in perfect step. That's horrible. It is effective, Kethvar corrected grimly. The hegemony has perfected the art of war by removing personal choice from the equation. No hesitation, no mercy, no unpredictable human emotions to complicate their objectives. Once the patrol passed, they continued their dangerous journey. The industrial district had been hit hardest, with most of the large factories reduced to twisted metal skeletons. Marcus recognized the remains of the old Ford plant where his father had worked before automation took those jobs. Now it looked like a giant had torn it apart looking for loose change. There, Velterra pointed to what appeared to be a collapsed warehouse near the river. The camouflage field is holding. Marcus squinted but could only see rubble and twisted beams. I don't see anything. Zarathax touched his shoulder and suddenly his vision shifted. The ruined warehouse shimmered and revealed itself to be a sophisticated holographic projection. Beneath it, Marcus glimpsed the sleek curves of a spacecraft unlike anything human technology had produced. Adaptive optical camouflage, Kethvar explained. The field analyzes the surrounding environment and projects a matching visual pattern. Even thermal and electromagnetic signatures are masked. The ship itself was beautiful in an alien way. Its hull flowed like liquid metal with no visible seams or joints. Golden lines traced intricate patterns across its surface, similar to the markings on Zarathax's skin. Despite being perhaps 200 feet long, it gave the impression of organic growth rather than mechanical construction. How did you crash something that advanced? Marcus asked. Hegemony ambush, Veltara replied bitterly. They sacrificed 3 attack cruisers to damage our engine core. We barely made it to the planet's surface. As they approached the ship, Marcus felt a tingling sensation, like static electricity before a thunderstorm. The golden lines on the hull pulsed brighter, and a section of the ship simply opened. Not like a door or airlock, but as if the metal became permeable to allow their passage. Inside, Marcus gasped. The ship's interior was even more impressive than its exterior. Walls curved in impossible geometries and soft light seemed to emanate from the very structure itself. Everything felt alive, as if the ship were a living organism rather than a machine. Biological technology, Zarathax explained, noticing his amazement. The ship grows rather than being built. Its systems adapt and evolve based on need. They moved through corridors that adjusted their size and configuration as they walked. Marcus felt like he was traveling through the circulatory system of some cosmic creature. The sensation was disorienting but not unpleasant. In what Marcus assumed was the control center, his perception of impossible was redefined again. The room contained no visible controls or displays, just organic-looking pods arranged around a central column that pulsed with inner light. The ship interfaces directly with our neural systems, Kethvar explained, moving to one of the pods. Thought becomes action. Intent becomes reality. Zarathax approached the central column and placed her hands against its surface. Immediately, the room filled with holographic displays showing the current state of the invasion. Marcus watched in horror as red markers spread across a global map, showing hegemony forces conquering city after city. London has fallen, Veltara reported, her voice heavy with regret. Beijing is under siege. The resistance forces are being systematically eliminated. Marcus studied the displays, noting patterns in the alien advance. They're targeting population centers first, then industrial areas. It's like they're collecting resources in order of value. Correct, Zarathax confirmed. Humans represent potential labor. Infrastructure provides immediate material value. Everything else is considered expendable. The ship's systems continued updating the global situation in real time. Marcus watched helplessly as familiar landmarks disappeared under alien occupation. The Statue of Liberty was being disassembled by massive mechanical arms. The Eiffel Tower had already been reduced to scrap metal. How many people have they taken? Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. The ship's AI provided statistics that made Marcus's knees weak. Hundreds of millions of humans had simply vanished under those blue harvesting beams. Entire cities stood empty, their populations transported to unknown fates. We must move quickly, Zarathax said, her golden patterns pulsing with urgency. The Hegemony command ship will complete its harvesting operations within 18 hours. After that, they will begin systematic elimination of remaining resistance. Kethvar activated another display showing the orbital situation. The Hegemony command ship hung in space like a dark spider, its hull bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. Smaller vessels moved around it in complex patterns, ferrying stolen resources from the planet's surface. Our ship's weapons can penetrate their shields, Veltara explained, but only if we achieve complete surprise. The moment they detect our approach, they will scramble their escort fighters. Marcus studied the tactical display, his mechanic's mind automatically analyzing the problem. What about their blind spots? Every machine has weak points. Zarathax smiled, and Marcus was struck again by how expressive her alien features could be, spoken like a true engineer. Yes, they have vulnerabilities. The command ship's sensors are focused downward, monitoring the harvesting operations. They have minimal coverage of the outer system. But getting past their sensor grid requires precise timing, Kethvar added, and someone aboard whose intentions cannot be read as hostile. The weight of responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders again. The fate of billions of people depended on his ability to fool alien computers into thinking he posed no threat. No pressure at all. Assuming we reach the command ship, Marcus said. How exactly do I disrupt their commander's neural link? Veltara produced a device that looked like a cross between a wrench and a tuning fork. This neural disruptor will sever the connection instantly, but you must place it within 5 feet of the command throne and activate it manually. Marcus took the device, noting its surprising weight. The metal felt warm to the touch and seemed to vibrate slightly. And you're sure their security won't detect this? The disruptor is composed entirely of earth metals, Zarathax explained. To their scanners, it will appear to be a primitive tool. They will classify it as harmless. The ship's AI chimed softly and displayed a new image. Massive hegemony transports rising from major cities around the globe. Each ship's hold contained millions of tons of stolen resources and thousands of captured humans. They're preparing for final phase operations, Kethavar observed grimly. Once those transports reach the command ship, the fleet will begin its departure sequence. Marcus felt time slipping away like sand through his fingers. How long do we have? 6 hours until we lose our opportunity, Zarathax replied. After that, the hegemony will be too dispersed to stop effectively. The Dragon Princess moved to one of the interface pods and began the ship's startup sequence. The vessel responded immediately, its biological systems awakening with a sound like a giant heartbeat. Marcus felt the ship come alive around them, its awareness touching the edges of his consciousness. The experience may be disorienting for a human, Veltara warned. Our ships achieve faster-than-light travel by temporarily merging their passengers' consciousness with the vessel's AI. Marcus strapped himself into a passenger pod that molded itself to his body shape. How disorienting are we talking about? Because I once rode the Gravitron at the state fair and that was pretty rough. Zarathax's laughter sounded like wind chimes made of crystal. I suspect this will be somewhat more intense than your carnival ride. The ship began to rise, its engines producing no sound that Marcus could detect. Through the transparent sections of hull, he watched the earth fall away beneath them. His ruined neighborhood became a pattern of lights and shadows, then disappeared entirely as they climbed toward the stars. Neural interface initiating, the ship's AI announced in a voice that seemed to speak directly into Marcus's mind. Prepare for consciousness merger. Marcus felt his perception expanding beyond his physical body. Suddenly he could feel the ship's systems as extensions of his own nervous system. The sensation was overwhelming and exhilarating simultaneously. They were going to space to save the world, and Marcus Chen from Detroit was apparently humanity's secret weapon. The thought would have been absurd yesterday. Today it was just Tuesday. The transition to space travel through neural interface was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. His consciousness expanded beyond his physical body, and suddenly he could perceive the ship's systems as naturally as his own heartbeat. He felt the flow of energy through biological conduits, the pulse of sensors reaching out into the void, and the subtle vibrations as the vessel adjusted its trajectory. Through the ship's extended senses, Marcus watched Earth shrink behind them. What should have been a beautiful blue marble was instead a world under siege. Dark spots marked where the hegemony had stripped away entire cities, leaving behind geometric scars that could be seen from orbit. The neural link is stabilizing well, Veltara observed, monitoring Marcus's vital signs through the ship's systems. Most humans experience severe disorientation during their first merger. Marcus found he could speak through the ship's communication system without moving his lips. I feel like I'm swimming through space itself. It's incredible. Zarathax's presence touched his mind through the shared interface. Her thoughts carried undertones of ancient wisdom and barely contained power. Your species possesses remarkable adaptability. Few races achieve such seamless integration on their first attempt. Ahead of them, the hegemony command ship grew larger with each passing moment. Through the enhanced sensors, Marcus could see it was even more massive than the displays had suggested. The vessel stretched for miles, its dark hull covered in sensor arrays and weapon emplacements that tracked their approach. They're scanning us, Kethavar reported, his thoughts tense with concentration. Multiple sensor sweeps increasing in intensity. Marcus felt the alien scanners probing the ship like invisible fingers searching for threats. The sensation was deeply unsettling, as if strangers were rifling through his personal belongings. But the ship's biological systems responded automatically, masking their true capabilities behind false readings. What are they detecting? Marcus asked. A damaged courier vessel with minimal armament, Zarathax replied, her mental voice carrying satisfaction. The ship's AI is generating false biosignatures consistent with a diplomatic mission. Through the ship's sensors, Marcus watched Hegemony escort fighters launch from the command vessel's bays. The smaller craft moved with the same mechanical precision as their ground forces, forming a perfect intercept pattern. Warning, unknown vessel, you are approaching restricted space, came a transmission in mechanical English. State your purpose or be destroyed. Zarathax opened a communication channel, but when she spoke, her voice had changed. Gone was the silk-over-steel tone Marcus had grown accustomed to. Instead, she projected the mannerisms of a frightened refugee. Please, we carry wounded, she transmitted, her voice breaking convincingly. Our ship was damaged fleeing the conflict zone. We seek only safe passage. Marcus watched the escort fighters through the ship's sensors. They maintained their intercept course but hadn't powered weapons yet. He could feel their commanders consulting with the main ship through neural links, processing the unexpected scenario. Unknown vessel, submit to boarding inspection, came the eventual response. Maintain current heading and prepare for docking procedures. Acknowledged, Zarathax replied, maintaining her frightened refugee act. We comply with all requirements. The escort fighters guided them toward one of the command ship's massive docking bays. As they approached, Marcus got his first close look at Hegemony architecture. Everything was angular and utilitarian, designed for function rather than aesthetics. The docking bay could have accommodated dozens of ships their size. Remember, Veltera's thoughts whispered through the neural link. You are a non-combatant survivor. Your only concern is reaching safety. Let genuine emotion guide your responses. Marcus didn't have to fake the terror he felt as their ship settled onto the docking platform with a subtle vibration. Through the sensors, he watched teams of Hegemony soldiers taking positions around their vessel. Each alien warrior carried weapons that could probably vaporize him instantly. Neural link disengaging, the ship's AI announced. Consciousness merger terminating. The sensation of returning to his physical body was jarring. Marcus gasped as his expanded awareness collapsed back into normal human perception. The world suddenly felt small and confined after experiencing the vast reach of the ship's senses. Zarathax and her companions were already moving, their forms shifting back toward their more human-like disguises. Not the house cats they had maintained on Earth, but humanoid appearances that might pass casual inspection. The transformation helps maintain the illusion, Zarathax explained, her scales fading to reveal pale skin and dark hair. The Hegemony expects refugees to appear properly cowed and harmless. Kethvar and Veltara completed their own transformations, becoming unremarkable human-appearing figures in worn clothing. The neural disruptor device was concealed in a simple tool bag that Marcus carried over his shoulder. Remember, Kethvar said, his voice now carrying a human accent. Act grateful for their protection. Let them believe they are offering mercy to helpless survivors. The ship's hull opened with the same fluid motion Marcus had observed on Earth. Outside, a squad of Hegemony soldiers waited with weapons trained on the exit. Their armor bore symbols that seemed to shift and flow in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Exit slowly, commanded the squad leader in mechanically translated English. Keep hands visible. Marcus stepped out first, raising his hands and trying to project the demeanor of someone grateful to be alive. The Hegemony soldiers were even more intimidating up close. Each stood nearly 8 feet tall, their armor making them appear more machine than biological. Please, Marcus said, letting genuine fear color his voice. We've been hiding for days. Is it safe here? The squad leader studied him with sensors built into his helmet. Marcus felt the mechanical gaze analyzing his vital signs, stress hormones, and brain activity. This was the crucial moment. If the Hegemony computers classified him as a threat, they would all be vaporized before they could blink. Civilian designation confirmed, the leader announced after an eternal few seconds. Minimal threat assessment. Escort to processing center. Zarathax and her companions followed Marcus out of the ship, maintaining their frightened refugee personas. The Hegemony soldiers formed a protective formation around them, treating them exactly as if they were helpless survivors in need of assistance. This way, the squad leader directed, leading them through corridors that stretched beyond sight in both directions. The command ship's interior was a maze of industrial passages and massive chamber spaces. Everything was designed on a scale that dwarfed human architecture. As they walked, Marcus observed the ship's operations. Streams of hegemony personnel moved through the corridors with mechanical efficiency. Transport containers filled with Earth-stolen resources flowed past on automated conveyor systems. The scope of the operation was staggering. How many ships like this do they have? Marcus whispered to Zarathax. 7 command vessels, she replied quietly. Each one capable of stripping a star system clean within weeks. They passed through security checkpoints where more sophisticated scanners analyzed them in detail. Each time Marcus held his breath, waiting for the alarms that would signal their discovery. Each time the machines classified them as non-threatening refugees and waved them through. The processing center turned out to be a vast chamber filled with containment cells. Thousands of humans from around the globe sat behind energy barriers, their faces blank with shock and despair. Marcus recognized the uniform look of people who had lost everything and couldn't yet process their new reality. Temporary housing, the squad leader explained with mechanical courtesy. You will be assigned work details once processing is complete. Marcus felt sick seeing so many captured humans. Children clung to their parents while elderly people stared at nothing with empty eyes. The hegemony had torn these people from their lives and now treated them like inventory. When will we be able to go home? Asked an older woman in a torn nurse's uniform. The squad leader's helmet turned toward her with mechanical precision. Your previous residence has been reclaimed for resource extraction. This is your new home. The casual way the alien delivered this devastating news made Marcus's anger flare. These beings had destroyed entire civilizations and spoke of it like discussing the weather. They truly didn't understand the concept of compassion or loss. You will be assigned to processing Q7, the squad leader told Marcus's group. Wait for further instructions. As the soldiers departed, Marcus and his companions found themselves in a holding area with about 50 other humans. The energy barrier hummed softly and Marcus could see weapon emplacements tracking their movements. Now what? Marcus asked quietly. Zarathax's eyes had returned to their amber color, though she maintained her human appearance. Now we wait for the right moment. The command center is 3 levels above us. When the shift change occurs in 6 hours, security will be momentarily reduced. Marcus studied the other prisoners, noting their mixture of terror and resignation. Many still wore the clothes they'd been sleeping in when the harvesting beams took them. Families huddled together, while isolated individuals sat in stunned silence. The 6 hours in containment crawled by with agonizing slowness. Marcus watched the other prisoners, noting how they adapted to their impossible situation with typical human resilience. A teacher had organized the children into quiet games. A doctor was treating injuries with improvised supplies. Even in captivity, people were taking care of each other. Your species continues to surprise me, Zarathax whispered, observing the same interactions. Most conquered populations either collapse into despair or explode into violence. Humans seem to find a third option. Marcus was watching an elderly man sharing his meager food ration with a hungry child when the shift change alarm sounded throughout the ship. The hegemony guards moved with their usual mechanical precision, but Marcus had learned to read the subtle patterns in their behavior. Security rotation beginning, Veltara noted quietly. The command level will have reduced coverage for exactly 11 minutes. Kethvar had spent the waiting time studying the ship's layout through subtle observation. 3 guard stations between here and the command center. During rotation, each will be operating with minimal staff. Zarathax began the process of dropping her human disguise. Her scales returned gradually, the transformation hidden by the shadows at the back of the containment area. The energy barrier has a weakness. It's designed to prevent escape, not to contain someone trying to get inside. Marcus felt his heart rate increasing as the moment of truth approached. What about the other prisoners? If this goes wrong, it won't go wrong, Zarathax said with quiet certainty, because you won't let it. The energy barrier flickered momentarily as the guard rotation continued. In that instant, Zarathax moved with liquid speed, her clawed fingers finding the barrier's power coupling. The energy field collapsed silently, creating a gap just large enough for them to slip through. They moved into the corridor during the brief window between guard patrols. Marcus's tool bag bounced against his hip, the neural disruptor device inside representing humanity's last hope. The weight of billions of lives pressed down on his shoulders. The ship's corridors were dimly lit during shift change, designed to minimize disruption to off-duty personnel. They climbed through maintenance shafts and service passages. avoiding the main thoroughfares where automated systems might detect their movement. The command center is heavily shielded, Kethvar explained as they ascended. Once we're inside, external communications will be impossible until the mission is complete. They reached the command level as the shift change alarm ended. Through a ventilation grate, Marcus could see the nerve center of the hegemony operation. The space was enormous, filled with holographic displays showing the systematic destruction of Earth. At the center of it all sat the hegemony commander. The being was larger than the soldiers Marcus had seen, his armor more elaborate and covered in symbols that seemed to pulse with their own light. Neural cables ran from his helmet to the command throne, creating a direct link between his consciousness and the ship's systems. Commander Jektar, Veltara identified grimly. He's personally overseen the conquest of 14 star systems. His tactical algorithms are considered flawless. Marcus studied the command center's layout. Dozens of hegemony officers worked at various stations, their minds linked to the central network. The commander's throne sat on a raised platform surrounded by weapon systems and security barriers. How do I get close enough to use the disruptor? Marcus asked. Zarathax's golden patterns pulsed with concentration as she analyzed the situation. The command center has protocols for handling civilian disruptions. If a non-threatening human appeared to be lost or confused, they would escort you to safety rather than eliminate you immediately. You want me to just walk in there and pretend to be lost? With genuine intent to help others, Kethvar corrected. Your motivations must be absolutely pure, or their scanners will detect deception. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to center himself. He thought about Mrs. Patterson's grandchildren, about old Rodriguez with his morning coffee, about all the small kindnesses that made life worth living. He thought about the prisoners below, trusting him to save them without even knowing he existed. I'm going to help those people, Marcus said quietly, and he meant it with every fiber of his being, whatever it takes. The neural disruptor device felt warm in his hands as he prepared to enter the command center. Around him, Zarathax and her companions readied themselves for the coordinated strike that would follow his disruption of the neural link. Marcus stepped through the maintenance hatch and into the command center, his tool bag slung over his shoulder like any other maintenance worker. The hegemony officers at the nearest stations turned toward him with mechanical curiosity. Excuse me, Marcus said, projecting confusion and concern rather than hostility. I'm looking for the medical bay. There are injured people in the detention area who need help. The officer's scanners analyzed him instantly. Marcus felt the familiar sensation of alien technology probing his thoughts and motivations. But this time, instead of fear or deception, they found only genuine concern for others' welfare. Human civilian, designation non-threatening, announced one of the officers. Medical facilities are located on Deck 7. This area is restricted. I'm sorry, Marcus replied, moving closer to the command platform with apparent confusion. I just want to help the injured people. Can you show me the way? The hegemony response was exactly as Zarathax had predicted. Instead of violence, they showed patience with what they perceived as a harmless, confused civilian. Two officers moved to escort him back to the appropriate area. Marcus allowed them to guide him past security barriers and weapon systems, all the while focusing on his sincere desire to help the prisoners. The neural disruptor remained hidden in his tool bag, its earth metal construction invisible to the ship's sophisticated scanners. The medical bay provides adequate care for all detainees, one escort explained as they approached the command throne. Your concern is unnecessary but noted. Commander Jektar turned his attention toward the minor disruption. Through his neural link to the ship's systems, he could perceive Marcus's complete psychological profile in real time. What he saw was a being driven entirely by compassion for others, without a trace of hostile intent. Curious, the commander said in mechanically translated English. This human exhibits motivational patterns outside normal parameters. Marcus was now within 5 feet of the command throne. The neural cables connecting the commander to the ship's systems pulsed with data flow, maintaining the link that coordinated the entire hegemony fleet. Commander, Marcus said, maintaining his confused civilian persona while slowly reaching into his tool bag. The people downstairs are scared and hurt. Can't you help them somehow? Jektar's scanners analyzed Marcus even more thoroughly, searching for any trace of deception or hidden agenda. They found only genuine concern for strangers, a motivation so alien to hegemony psychology that their computers struggled to process it. This behavior pattern requires further study, the commander decided. The human will be transferred to the research division for analysis. That was the moment Marcus had been waiting for. While the commander's attention was focused on the analytical puzzle Marcus represented, he activated the neural disruptor. The device emitted a pulse of energy tuned specifically to disrupt the neural interface technology. Commander Jektar convulsed as the link to his ship's systems was severed instantly. Alarms began blaring throughout the command center as the hegemony fleet lost its central coordination. Neural link severed, an officer announced in mechanical panic. Command network failing. Chaos erupted in the command center, as individual officers suddenly found themselves operating without the collective consciousness that had guided their every action. Years of suppressed individuality came flooding back, leaving them confused and disoriented. At that moment, Zarathax and her companions struck from the maintenance shafts. The Dragon Princess had returned to her full alien form, her scales blazing with golden fire as she engaged the command center's weapon systems. Kethavar and Veltara moved with lethal precision, their advanced technology making short work of the confused hegemony officers. Marcus dove for cover as energy weapons discharged around him. The neural disruptor had done its job, but now he was trapped in the middle of a firefight between forces he could barely comprehend. Marcus, Zarathax called out between bursts of weapons fire. The secondary command station. Destroy it before they can restore the link. Marcus spotted the backup system, a smaller version of the commander's throne surrounded by its own protective barriers. Still carrying his tool bag, he sprinted across the command center while alien weapons discharged around him. The secondary command station's barriers were designed to stop energy weapons, not simple kinetic force. Marcus swung his wrench with all the strength built up from years of mechanical work, shattering control panels and severing neural interface cables. Backup systems failing, another officer announced as Marcus continued his systematic destruction of anything that looked important. Throughout the ship, the effects of lost central coordination became apparent. Automated systems began conflicting with each other. Guard patrols stopped receiving orders. The carefully orchestrated invasion began falling apart as individual hegemony units lost their unified purpose. Commander Jektar, still reeling from the neural disconnection, tried to comprehend what had happened. Impossible. The human showed no hostile intent. Our scanners detected only compassion. Zarathax approached the fallen commander, her golden patterns pulsing with satisfaction. That's exactly what you detected. Marcus Chen acted not from hatred or fear, but from genuine concern for others. Your systems have no defense against pure altruism. Outside the command ship, the hegemony fleet found itself in chaos. Without central coordination, individual ship commanders began making conflicting decisions. Some tried to continue the harvest, others attempted to retreat, and a few simply stopped functioning entirely. In the vastness of space beyond Earth's solar system, long-range sensors detected the breakdown in hegemony operations. Ancient engines began warming up as the Draconic Imperium's battle fleet prepared to enter the system. The liberation of Earth had begun, sparked by a mechanic from Detroit who had simply wanted to help some stray cats. The chaos aboard the hegemony command ship spread like wildfire through their entire fleet. Without the neural network binding them together, individual ship commanders found themselves making independent decisions for the first time in decades. The result was catastrophic for their coordinated operation. Marcus watched through the command center's displays as hegemony vessels began colliding with each other in Earth's orbit. Ships that had been moving in perfect synchronization suddenly found themselves operating on conflicting trajectories. Some tried to continue harvesting operations while others attempted emergency retreats, creating a massive traffic jam of alien spacecraft. The entire fleet structure is collapsing, Veltara reported, monitoring the tactical displays. Individual commanders are reverting to base protocols, but they're contradicting each other. Zarathax stood over the fallen commander Jektar, her golden patterns now blazing with victory. 17 star systems you've conquered using collective consciousness and suppressed individuality. But you never learned to function when faced with genuine individual choice. The hegemony commander struggled to process what had happened. This was an impossible outcome. Our tactical matrices accounted for all known variables. You accounted for selfishness, fear, and aggression. Marcus said, still clutching his wrench. But you never considered that someone might risk everything just to help strangers. Through the ship's communication systems, they could hear frantic transmissions as hegemony vessels throughout the solar system reported similar breakdowns. The loss of central coordination had created a cascade failure that affected every aspect of their operation. Command Ship Epsilon requesting immediate reinforcement, came one transmission. Local resistance forces have overwhelmed our ground units. Harvesting Vessel Gamma reporting critical system failures, came another. Cargo containers are colliding with escort fighters. Kethvar activated the ship's long-range sensors, revealing the approach of massive new contacts from beyond the system's edge. The Imperium fleet has detected the breakdown. They're moving to engage. On the displays, Marcus watched as sleek ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. Unlike the angular, mechanical appearance of hegemony vessels, these new arrivals seemed to flow like liquid metal. Their hulls were covered in the same golden patterns Marcus had seen on Zarathax, but scaled up to planetary proportions. The Draconic Imperium's third battle fleet, Zarathax identified with obvious pride. 67 ships of the line commanded by Admiral Keth Yuan. The arrival of the Imperium fleet triggered panic among the disorganized hegemony forces. Some ships tried to fight, others attempted to flee, and many simply powered down their weapons in apparent surrender. Without central coordination, they couldn't mount any effective resistance. "This is Admiral Keth Yuan of the Imperium vessel Starfire," came a new transmission on all frequencies. "Hegemony forces, you are in violation of Galactic Convention 7 regarding the enslavement of developing species. Surrender immediately or face destruction." Marcus was amazed by the speed of the Imperium response. "How did they get here so fast?" "They've been waiting just outside the system for weeks," Zarathax explained. "The Imperium needed confirmation that humanity was worth preserving before intervening. Your actions provided that confirmation." The battle, if it could be called that, was remarkably one-sided. Hegemony ships that tried to fight found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered by Imperium forces. Those that attempted to flee were systematically herded back toward Earth's orbit. The few that surrendered were taken into protective custody. "Hegemony command ship, this is Admiral Keth Yuan," came a direct transmission. "We detect Princess Zarathax aboard your vessel. Status report requested." Zarathax moved to the communication console, her royal bearing evident despite their desperate circumstances. "Uncle, the mission is complete. Human civilian Marcus Chen successfully disrupted hegemony command protocols using methods they could not anticipate. Acknowledged, Princess. Prepare for extraction. Our boarding parties will secure the command ship momentarily." Through the displays, Marcus watched as Imperium boarding craft approached their position. The sleek vessels attached themselves to the command ship's hull with mechanical precision, and Marcus could hear the sound of cutting tools preparing entry points. "What happens now?" Marcus asked, suddenly aware that he was standing in the middle of an alien civil war. "Now," Zarathax said, "we begin the process of liberation and restoration. The hegemony's stolen resources will be returned to Earth, and their prisoners will be freed." Commander Jektar, still struggling with the unfamiliar sensation of independent thought, looked up at Marcus with something resembling curiosity. "How is it possible? Your species should have been easily conquered. Our psychological profiles indicated standard patterns of self-interest and tribal aggression." Marcus thought about his answer carefully. "You're not wrong about humans being selfish and aggressive. We definitely have those problems. But we're also capable of something you apparently never encountered: choosing to be better than our worst impulses." The sound of energy-cutting tools grew louder as Imperium forces prepared to breach the command center. Throughout the ship, Marcus could hear the systematic surrender of hegemony personnel as they were overwhelmed by boarding parties. "Your people showed compassion to beings they believed were helpless animals," Zarathax observed. "That single act of kindness ultimately saved your entire world." The main blast door to the command center suddenly glowed white-hot and collapsed inward. Through the breach came Imperium soldiers in ornate armor that seemed to shift between different metallic colors. They moved with the same fluid grace Marcus had observed in Zarathax, but their bearing spoke of military discipline rather than royal authority. Princess, the lead soldier called out, rushing to Zarathax's side. Are you injured? I am unharmed, Captain, she replied formally, as are my companions and our human ally. The captain's gaze fell on Marcus, and he could see the alien trying to reconcile the appearance of an ordinary human with someone who had apparently defeated an entire hegemony fleet. This is the one. Who disrupted their neural network? Marcus Chen, mechanic of Earth, Zarathax confirmed. Without his assistance, the hegemony would have completed their harvesting operation and moved on to neighboring systems. More Imperium soldiers flooded into the command center, securing hegemony prisoners and beginning the process of taking control of ship systems. Marcus watched in fascination as they worked, noting how their technology seemed to interface seamlessly with the captured vessel. What about the people in detention? Marcus asked, suddenly remembering the thousands of human prisoners throughout the ship, already being processed for release, the captain assured him. Medical teams are treating injuries and transport vessels are being prepared to return everyone to Earth's surface. Through the command center's displays, Marcus could see the systematic restoration beginning across the solar system. Imperium engineering vessels were already working to repair the damage to Earth's cities, their technology somehow reversing the destruction that had seemed permanent. How is that possible? Marcus asked, watching a collapsed building reassemble itself on the display. Temporal resonance technology, Veltara explained. We can read the quantum signatures of how things were and restore them to previous states. It requires enormous energy, but the Imperium considers it a moral obligation when dealing with hegemony damage. Admiral Kethuan's image appeared on the main display, his reptilian features bearing a striking resemblance to Zarathax. Princess, the preliminary assessment is complete. Human casualties are being healed, infrastructure is being restored, and all hegemony prisoners have been secured. What of the stolen resources? Zarathax asked. Being returned as we speak. The hegemony's cargo vessels contained materials from 17 different worlds. Each will be restored to its point of origin. Marcus felt overwhelming relief wash over him. So it's really over? Earth is safe? Earth is safe, Admiral Kethuan confirmed. But more importantly, humanity has demonstrated qualities that make them worthy of protection under galactic convention. You will be offered membership in the Confederation of Free Worlds. The weight of what had happened began to sink in. In the span of a single day, Marcus had gone from feeding stray cats to helping liberate his entire planet. The magnitude of it all should have been overwhelming, but somehow he felt at peace. There is one more matter to address, Zarathax said, turning to face Marcus directly. The Imperium wishes to offer you a formal position as cultural liaison between Earth and the Confederation. Marcus looked around the alien command center, at the technology beyond his comprehension, and the beings whose motives he was only beginning to understand. I'm honored, but I think I'd like to go home and fix cars for a while. This has been a lot to process. Zarathax smiled, and Marcus was struck again by how expressive her alien features could be. The offer will remain open. Take all the time you need. As Imperium forces completed their takeover of the command ship, Marcus found himself looking forward to something he'd never thought he'd see again. A normal day in his garage, maybe with some cats keeping him company. 6 months after the liberation of Earth, Marcus Chen stood in his rebuilt garage watching 3 familiar cats play in the afternoon sunlight. The Imperium's restoration technology had worked miracles, but they'd been careful to maintain the character of each neighborhood. His shop looked exactly as it had before the invasion, down to the coffee stain on his workbench. You know, he said to the black cat currently batting at a wrench, I still can't believe you're actually alien royalty. Nyx, back in her cat form by choice rather than necessity, looked up at him with those intelligent amber eyes. Since the liberation, she'd been spending her days as a cat and her evenings in humanoid form, helping coordinate Earth's integration into the Confederation of Free Worlds. The bell above his door chimed, and Marcus looked up to see Dr. Sarah Chen entering with a clipboard. No relation despite the shared surname, but she'd become his unofficial liaison with the various galactic organizations now working on Earth. How are our special guests today? She asked, gesturing toward the cats. Demanding as ever, Marcus replied with a grin. Whiskers knocked over my coffee this morning and Patches somehow got into the tool cabinet again. Dr. Chen made a note on her clipboard. The Confederation Council is meeting next week to discuss Earth's formal membership application. They'd like you to attend as an observer. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag, considering the offer. Will there be other humans there? Several. Earth's delegation includes scientists, diplomats, and cultural representatives from every continent. But you're the only one who actually saved the planet. The reminder still felt surreal. Marcus had returned to his normal routine of fixing cars and feeding cats, but the world around him had changed dramatically. Alien technology was being carefully integrated with human systems. Trade agreements were being negotiated with dozens of different species. Earth was taking its first steps onto the galactic stage. I keep telling people I just did what anyone would do, Marcus said. Nyx made a sound that might have been feline laughter. In the evening, when she took her humanoid form, she'd explained that very few beings in the galaxy would have acted as Marcus had. Selfless compassion wasn't rare, but the willingness to risk everything for strangers was apparently quite unusual. That's exactly what makes you remarkable, Dr. Chen said. You don't see your actions as extraordinary. Through his window, Marcus could see one of the Imperium medical centers that had been established in every major city. Human patients entered with injuries or illnesses that had been considered incurable, only to emerge completely healed hours later. The aliens had technology that seemed like magic, but they used it purely for humanitarian purposes. Any word on the hegemony trials? Marcus asked. The War Crimes Tribunal concluded last week, Dr. Chen replied. Most of the commanders were sentenced to rehabilitation rather than execution. Apparently, their collective consciousness conditioning is considered a mitigating factor. Marcus nodded. He'd testified at the trials, describing how the hegemony's inability to understand compassion had led to their downfall. The judges had been fascinated by his perspective, though he still felt like his contribution was being overstated. Commander Jektar had been among those sentenced to rehabilitation. The former hegemony leader was currently learning to function as an individual for the first time in his adult life. According to reports, he'd shown remarkable progress and had even expressed something resembling gratitude toward Marcus for freeing him from the collective consciousness. Oh, and there's one more thing, Dr. Chen added, pulling a official-looking document from her clipboard. The Draconic Imperium has issued a formal commendation. You're now an honorary citizen of 7 different star systems. Marcus took the document, noting the elaborate golden seal at the bottom. What does that mean exactly? Free travel throughout Imperium space, access to their medical facilities, and a pension that would make most billionaires jealous, Dr. Chen explained. Also, any offspring you might have will be eligible for the finest education the galaxy has to offer. Patches jumped onto his workbench and began investigating the commendation document with typical feline curiosity. Marcus gently moved the cat aside before the parchment could be shredded. Speaking of offspring, Dr. Chen continued with a slight smile, several species have expressed interest in cultural exchange programs. Apparently, human adaptability and emotional range are considered quite valuable traits. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? Nothing inappropriate, Dr. Chen assured him quickly. More like adoption programs and educational exchanges, though I understand Princess Zarathax has mentioned that political marriages between species have historical precedent in Imperium culture. As if summoned by her name, Nyx suddenly stood and walked to the door. A moment later it opened to admit Zarathax in her humanoid form. She'd taken to dressing in human business attire for her diplomatic duties, though the golden patterns were still visible on her skin. Marcus, she said formally, then nodded to Dr. Chen. Doctor, I hope I'm not interrupting. Just discussing Marcus's new citizenship status, Dr. Chen replied. I'll leave you two to talk. After the doctor left, Zarathax moved to the workbench where Marcus was pretending to organize his tools. How are you adjusting to fame? I'm not famous, Marcus protested. I just did what needed to be done. Your story is being taught in schools across 17 star systems, Zarathax pointed out. Children learn about the human who saved Earth through compassion rather than violence. You're quite famous. Marcus set down his wrench and faced her directly. Is that why you're here? Official princess business? Zarathax's pattern shifted to warmer colors, and Marcus had learned to recognize this as a sign of personal rather than professional emotion. Actually, I wanted to discuss something more personal. Oh? The Imperium Council has approved my request to establish a permanent embassy on Earth. As the ranking diplomatic representative, I would be stationed here indefinitely. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Over the past months, he'd grown accustomed to Zarathax's daily visits. Her presence had become one of the constants in his dramatically altered life. Where would this embassy be located? He asked carefully. Ideally, somewhere that would allow easy access to local cultural representatives, Zarathax replied, her patterns shifting to even warmer hues. Perhaps near a certain auto repair shop if the owner wouldn't object to alien neighbors. Marcus looked around his garage, imagining how it might feel to have permanent alien neighbors. The thought was surprisingly appealing. There's a building for rent across the street, he said. Old Murphy's Corner Store. It's been empty since the invasion. Perfect, Zarathax said, and Marcus could hear genuine happiness in her voice. Of course, establishing an embassy would require careful coordination with local authorities. Someone who understands both human nature and galactic protocols. You'd need a cultural liaison, Marcus agreed. Preferably someone with experience in interspecies relations, Zarathax added, stepping closer. Someone who's proven their ability to bridge different worlds. Marcus set down his tools and faced her fully. Are you offering me a job, Princess? I'm offering you a partnership, she corrected. Earth needs advocates who understand what makes humanity special. The galaxy needs to learn about compassion and selfless action. Whiskers and Patches had joined Nyx near the door, all three cats watching the conversation with obvious interest. Marcus realized they probably understood every word, even in their animal forms. Would this partnership be purely professional? Marcus asked. Zarathax's golden patterns now pulsed with what Marcus had learned to recognize as joy. That would depend entirely on what both partners desired. Marcus thought about his life before the invasion, working alone, eating dinner alone, going to bed alone. Then he thought about the past months, filled with purpose and friendship and the constant presence of beings who had become more than allies. I'd need to keep the garage running, he said. People depend on me to fix their cars. Of course, Zarathax agreed. Though you might find that Imperium engineering students would be very interested in learning human mechanical techniques. Marcus could picture it. His garage becoming a meeting place between species. A small corner where human and alien knowledge merged to create something new. It wasn't the quiet life he'd planned, but it felt right. All right, he said, extending his hand. Partners. Zarathax took his hand in both of hers, her scaled skin warm against his palm. Partners, she agreed. Outside, the sun was setting over a Detroit that had been destroyed and reborn. Children played in streets that alien technology had rebuilt stronger than before. Overhead, ships from a dozen different worlds moved through Earth's skies, carrying trade goods and cultural exchanges between species. Marcus Chen, former loner and current savior of humanity, watched his cats investigate their food bowls and realized that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could change everything. He'd fed 3 strays because it was the right thing to do, never imagining it would lead to this moment.